POTUS needs to declare victory by mid-next week, or we will be looking at a doomsday scenario for West Coast supply chain workers. The logistics industry employs 8 million people in the US. So that is 8 million jobs that are now vulnerable. So again, it is very likely that we'll start to see the real actual outcome of these tariffs in May.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Tumwa, Iowa. Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up.
Hey, it's Ashley with Status Coup. Thanks to Trump's tariff disaster, your store shelves might soon be looking a little bit empty, and the workers currently filling them might soon be out of a job. So as always, the consequences of this administration's haphazard concepts of a plan, tariff plan, are coming for working people. So this is a post on Twitter from one Molson Hart, the CEO of an educational toy company, Viahart. The White House has put itself and the country in a bad situation, but doesn't realize it yet. Around April 10th, China to USA trade shut down. It takes roughly 30 days for containers to go from China to LA, 45 to Houston by sea, 45 to Chicago by train, 55 to New York by sea. That means that there are no economic effects of what was done on April 10th until about May 10th. So we still are not even seeing the full breadth of the damage that's been done. Around that time, it's already starting to happen. Trucking work is going to dry up. Warehouses will start doing layoffs because no labor is needed to unload containers, and some products will be out of stock, reducing the need for shipping labor. All of this will start in the Los Angeles area. After about 2 weeks, it'll start hitting Chicago and Houston. So in about a month, consumers are going to start seeing the real consequences of our unwinnable trade war with China. How this outcome seems to have come as a surprise to the entire administration and the bootlickers that they have surrounded themselves with, I cannot possibly imagine. Trump was so certain that the tariffs were going to immediately just win that he and his circle apparently made no plans for what would happen if they didn't immediately work. Or, just as likely, they simply don't care what happens to the average consumer and whether or not they can actually get the cheap goods that we are all used to being able to just grab off the shelves at places like Target and Walmart that are all largely made in China. And the CEOs of these companies are apparently extremely worried about them potentially not being able to sell us the cheap goods that they usually sell to us. So I'm going to read from a Mediaite piece talking about exactly this. So Trump warned by Walmart, Target, and Home Depot CEOs that disastrous tariff policy will lead to empty shelves. President Donald Trump got a scare from CEOs of the nation's largest big box retailers that their shelves could soon be empty as a result of his draconian tariff policy announced on April 2nd, according to a report from Axios. As a result, the White House appears to be pivoting to a much softer position on trade. Yes, a much softer position. Markets rallied on Tuesday as investors learned that the Trump administration was pivoting to a softer position on the controversial tariff policy, which cratered 401ks and led to talk of an inevitable recession. And the piece goes on to say, I do say China is going to be a slog in terms of the negotiations, Scott Bessent said, according to a transcript obtained by the Associated Press. Neither side thinks the status quo is sustainable. But CEOs of Walmart, Target, and Home Depot privately warned Trump in an Oval Office meeting that supply changes will be, I'm sure that means supply chains, will be disrupted, prices will increase, and shelves of their stores will be empty, according to sources reported by Axios. And they reported in Axios, the big box CEOs flat out told him, Trump, that prices aren't going up. They're steady right now, but they will go up. And this wasn't about food, but he was told that shelves will be empty. An administration official familiar with the meeting told Axios. Another official briefed on the meeting said the CEOs told Trump disruptions could become noticeable in 2 weeks. While that was happening, financial markets were slumping. Stocks, bonds, the dollar, as investors panicked about Trump's latest threats to oust Fed Chair Jerome Powell and step on the central bank's independence. Even if this isn't the outcome you're expecting, isn't this the kind of thing that you should be able to predict a little bit in advance if you are making plans or meddling with global trade? Shouldn't you also know a little bit about how trade works, especially when the consequences of this could be pretty major? Even if you don't expect to have an emergency, you are expected to have some kind of contingency plan in case something ever does happen. like having a savings account and not buying so many lattes and avocado toast that you have put yourself in a spot if something does actually happen. But these people will not follow their own advice because it is all disingenuous nonsense. And here's another Twitter post from one Craig Fuller, who runs FreightWaves, an outlet that covers supply chain logistics. So here's the post. Import volumes will start drying up the first week of May. Companies tied to imports, port operators, truckers, warehouses, forwarders, and railroads will all struggle. Layoffs the following week. POTUS needs to declare victory by mid next week, or we will be looking at a doomsday scenario for West Coast supply chain workers. The logistics industry employs 8 million people in the US. So that is 8 million jobs that are now vulnerable. So again, it is very likely that we'll start to see the real actual outcome of these tariffs in May. And as this post notes, there are roughly 8 million people who are employed at some node of this network. They're all in a vulnerable position now. And I thought the whole idea behind the tariffs was just to preserve the jobs that we have and bring more jobs here. Instead, it seems like we are just hemorrhaging jobs left and right, no matter what industry we're talking about. And in response to the havoc that Trump has caused and the obvious conclusion that he's fucking losing, he announced that he is tucking tail and walking back the tariffs. So this is from the Washington Post. White House eases tone on tariffs on China, but won't be cutting them soon, it says. President Donald Trump, stung by a mounting backlash to his historic tariff plans, signaled on Wednesday that he is aiming for an end to the most intense period of global trade conflict in several decades. The president talked for weeks about the need for Americans to endure short-term pain before enjoying his promised golden age of manufacturing heavy prosperity. But with financial markets rocking and business leaders warning of product shortages, Trump now is highlighting his expectations for reaching a fair deal with China, and his aides are touting prospects for other early agreements. This is fucking pathetic. And as the post on Twitter indicated, trade and shipping isn't just going to magically go back to the way that it was, assuming that Trump reaches some kind of deal with China very, very quickly. It would take some time, and that's assuming that all the factories in China that are kind of propping up our false sense of abundance just immediately resume production as though there has been no incident, which I don't think is a safe assumption to make. And apparently Molson Hart, who wrote the first post on Twitter that I read for you, doesn't seem to think so either. So he goes on to say, let's say the White House, after 3 weeks, changes its mind on May 31st. They say this isn't working out like we thought it would, tariffs back to zero. Let's say China then says bygones be bygones, we'll go back to how things were. Let's say every factory in China that got screwed by their orders being canceled says the same thing, no problem, we'll make and ship. The problem is, even under the most favorable conditions of China and the factories restarting economic ties as though nothing happened, it will be at least another 30 days before economic activity is revived. And that's just in LA. In Chicago and Houston, you'll need to wait another 45 days. New York at that point will still be getting containers from before April 10th. They will then have 50 days, May 31st minus April 10th, of zero economic activity at the ports, in trucking of Chinese goods, in warehousing. The whole situation is a bit like lockdowns. Once you shut down, it takes a long time to get economic activity back to where it was, if you ever can. And again, this assumes that China and its factories, which make things you can't buy anywhere else, will start right back up as though nothing happened, which is unlikely. It almost seems like we're speeding toward a brick wall, but the driver of the car doesn't see it yet. By the time he does, it'll be too late to hit the brakes. It is extremely clear now that we are playing on China's terms here, and they know it. We are not the US of the old days. We're a diminishing superpower, lighting candles in a dark room, hoping that no one will notice that the power has already gone out. And all of these people at Stellantis and all of the other places where there have been mass layoffs, that whole long list of layoffs that I read just a couple of weeks ago, what happens to these people? Do they just get their jobs back now after this whole ordeal is over? I think probably not. And again, there could be more job losses on the way as a result of all of this shipping disruption and empty shelves where all of the cheap consumer goods that we've apparently leveraged almost everything for used to be. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please do consider becoming a paid member of Status Coup for as little as $5 a month so that we can keep bringing you reporting like this. And you can sign up at statuscoup.com/join, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.